And you could, in terms of, so I was talking about, we're going to be doing sort of some rocking and rolling type things today. So perhaps the first thing you could start with is a bit of letting your head roll from side to side on the floor. So there, you know, there's times when we can do these sort of, we can roll just a part of our body, but I think a lot of what we're going to be doing today is letting the whole of the body rock or roll. But yes, letting your head roll to the right and to the left, and just letting your shoulders settle on the floor, easing out your neck. And from rolling your head, finding a comfortable place to settle the center of the back of your head on the floor. I'm just going to grab my water because I think I've left it in the kitchen. So while I'm doing that, what you can do is bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor. And when you're ready, just a little bit of tilting your knees to the right and to the left. And so again, this is this feeling of rocking across the back of the pelvis, shifting the weight to the right and to the left. Okay, and then settle down in the centre. And what I'd like you to do is keep your right knee bent and lengthen your left leg out on the floor. And then you're going to cross your arms over your chest with your right arm on top. So we're going to do this movement where we press into the foot, and then we also, so the right side of the pelvis comes off the floor, but I also would like you to roll across the upper back. So you roll your weight onto the back of the left shoulder, that's it. And your right fingertips can reach out along the floor on the left. So sometimes we do this movement, we start off with just pressing the foot, but I wanted you to start with using the foot and rolling across the upper back today, because it's this theme of the sort of rolling through the body. Make sure as you're doing this, however, that you keep sending your knee forwards. So your knee is traveling, because that's it. The knee's traveling forwards rather than over to the left. So we're rolling across the back of the body. So our weight is shifting to our right side, but we're still staying planted into the right. No, sorry, the weight's shifting to our left side, but we're still staying planted into the right foot. That's it. And just really seeing, how does it feel to roll across the back of your body? That's nice. And so perhaps a couple more times on this side. And then just maybe have a breath or two in the center. So uncross your arms, maybe lengthen out that right leg if that's comfortable, or either bend both knees and let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. Feel the weight of your body resting on the ground. And then when you're ready, organize yourself to do the other side. So if your legs are long, bend your left knee and your left leg and stand your left foot on the floor. That's it. And then give yourself a hug with your arms. So cross your arms over your chest with your left arm on top this time. And so the same movement on this side, so that as we press down into our left foot, we also roll across our upper back. So our weight shifts onto the back of the right shoulder, and we can slide the left fingertips on the floor away from the body. So on the left fingertips, reach out on the floor on your right side. So you feel your weight rolling towards the left side of your body, but you still keep planted through your the right side of your body. So it's been a long, hot day. My lefts and rights are not very good. So your weight is rolling towards the left side, the right side of your body, and your left foot stays planted on the floor. So do this perhaps 2 or 3 more times on this side. And again, this feeling of how is it to roll across the back of your body? Can you feel that in using this rolling movement, there's an opportunity to release tension? Good. And in your own time, settling back in the centre, uncrossing your arms. It might be quite nice again to lengthen both legs out for a moment, but we're then going to end up with the knees bent. So Kayla, you could keep your knees bent, it's fine. But yeah, if you want to lengthen your legs out, give the legs a little bit of a roll, bounce the knees. And then once you've done that, bend both knees, stand both feet on the floor. Good, that's it. Take a moment to feel the contact of your footprints on the ground and the back of your pelvis on the ground. And then what I'd like you to do is come to that movement of tilting your pelvis. So you tip your pelvis towards your head and your lower back flattens out a bit more, makes more contact with the ground. You tip your pelvis away from your face and your lower back arches off the floor a little bit. Keep it comfortable and just, yeah, go a few times with this rocking of the pelvis, tilting of the pelvis towards your face, away from your face. And just see how this feels. And then from here, whenever you're ready, you're going to carry on with that movement and take it into bridge pose. But think about really the sort of bridge pose as a movement, as a rolling up and down. So we perhaps tilt the pelvis so the tailbone comes off the floor, and then we roll up through the spine, and then we roll back down again. So very much sort of experiencing, yeah, bridge pose right now as this rolling up and down. Maybe three times. Not really staying there, but just up and down. And again, how does this feel? Yes, and that's quite nice, Maria, when you come back down out of bridge pose to then arch your lower back the other way. I think that's what you were doing. And yes, I quite like that as well. Good. Maybe, yes, so make this the last bridge pose and then settle your pelvis on the floor. And if you feel that for a moment you'd like to fold your knees into your chest, you can do. And I just remembered then when I, you know what made me think about this class with rolling is I dreamt last night that I was doing yoga and I was rolling, doing this rolling sort of all the way over, lying long and then rolling sort of over and over. So yeah, we're not going to do that, but that's what gave me these thoughts. So when you've had a little hug of your knees into your chest, then bring your feet back onto the floor. So both feet on the floor, and then again, cross your arms over your chest. It doesn't matter which arm is on top now. And now come to letting your knees and your elbows and your head all rock to the right and then all rock to the left. That's it. So you are rocking side to side across the back of your body again, back of your body. So yes, we were doing sort of rocking onto one side, but now we're rocking from side to side. And again, see how that feels. Good. And in a moment from here, you can carry on rocking a few more times. In a moment, you're going to rock all the way onto one side and just settle on your side with your knees bent and maybe bring your bottom arm under your head so you can just sort of rest your head on your arm like a bit of a pillow. And settle on your side and just have a couple of breaths there and see how it feels to lie on your side and to feel the movement of your breath in your body. And then I'd like you to do the movement here where you if you feel your bottom ribs on the floor, where you then lift those ribs off the floor. So it's like you make a little sort of archway under the side of your torso. So you imagine like a little mouse could slide under. So a few times, that's it. Lift those bottom ribs, the ribs that are touching the floor, lift them off the floor, and then place them back down and just see how that feels. And when I was doing this earlier, I thought, oh, that, you know, that feels quite tight. And so maybe just once or twice more lifting the ribs. And then in your own time, just roll back onto your back and then all the way onto your second side. That's it, roll onto your back and then all the way onto side 2. And settle yourself on your second side in the same way. So with your arm making a bit of a pillow for your head and your knees bent, and just being very settled on your side to start with, trying to feel the movement of your breath in your body. So a bit as if you're going to have a little snooze here. And then several times you can explore that movement of lifting the bottom ribs off the floor and placing them back down and seeing how it feels on this second side. And so it's quite interesting because sometimes I find that little lifting of the ribs is just what my body needs. But I was interested today that actually it wasn't so much. So, you know, every day is different. And all of our bodies are different. So we need different things at different times. Good. And then from here, you're going to roll back onto your back again. And just have a couple of breaths lying on your back. So it might be quite nice at this point just to bring your hands to rest on the front of your body somewhere. And maybe 3 cycles of breath, feeling the breath come in, feeling the breath leave you. That's very nice. So just a couple more quiet cycles of breath. So when we come to feeling our breath like this, it can just be very settling for us to be resting with the hands on the body, feeling the movement of our breath within us. Now we're going to, from here, roll back onto your first side, and this time you're going to lengthen yourself out on the floor. We're going to come to our side balance, Anantasana. So this is a little bit, so again, you're rolling onto your side. I'm going to do this with you. And so you do come to the side you can see me from, but you all know this one well. So again, you could have your arm supporting your head in the same way. I tend to like to prop my head up in my hand, although at the end of a long hot day, you might want to be lying down. Your top hand can be on the floor in front of you. And you can do these little rocking movements here. So you let your weight rock sort of forwards and back, just along on the side of your body to help you settle down. And we're going to move through the different leg positions quite, fairly quickly. We're not going to stay here too long. So from here, when you're ready, you could keep your hand on the floor. You can slide your top leg into tree pose. You might need your hand to help bring your heel a bit higher up your thigh. You can see how that feels. And then you can come on to the one where we bring the knee towards the armpit on the top side of the body. And again, you can always bend your bottom knee if you feel wobbly here. And then at this point, you catch your trouser leg, or you catch your ankle or your big toe. And we lengthen this leg up towards the ceiling. And we try to stay settled through the side of our body and have a few breaths here. So at this point, you might stretch into both heels. And yeah, it's that quite nice feeling that we're reclining, we're lying down, but we're also quite alert through this feeling of stretching into the heels. And then from here, you're going to just start to come back down, bend that leg, bring that top leg again. And from here, you're going to roll onto your belly before we come on to side two. So come and settle on your belly. And have your arms however you like. I tend to have one hand on top of the other and my forehead or my cheek resting there. And you can wiggle your pelvis a bit. And just see how it feels to be on your belly, having a couple of breaths here. And so as I've said in many previous classes, that lying and breathing on our belly or doing things on our belly is very good for the health of our lungs. And so from our belly, we're going to then roll on to side two of Anantasana. So if you know what you're doing, you don't necessarily need to look at the screen, so you can roll the other way. I've turned around in case you do want to watch me. So settling yourself down in the same way. So you've either got your arm like a bit of a pillow for your head, or you're propping your head up in your hand. You've got your other hand on the floor in front of you, and we're doing that little bit of rocking to start with. And this is all about our settling. So rocking is one of the ways we can help ourselves to settle. Part of that's getting the fidgeting out of the way at the start, but also it's quite soothing. Maybe fidgeting is soothing in itself. So from here, we can start to slide that top foot into tree pose. We might need to use the hand to help. Have a breath or two in tree. I quite like the next place. So when the knee comes towards the armpits, if I can keep my balance there, that often feels quite a nice place to be. Remember, you can bend the knee of the bottom leg if you feel wobbly. And then yes, whenever you want to, catching your big toe, your ankle, your shin, supporting that top leg somehow, just so the leg feels less heavy if you're using your arm to support it. Good. Having a few breaths here. And so again, this feeling that we're settled on the floor, but we're also feeling hopefully quite alert because we're stretching into the heels of both legs. Good. So maybe another breath or two there. And then again, as we make our way down, we'll roll back onto the belly again for a few more cycles of breath. So you can come back down, you can come onto your side, perhaps balance on your side for a moment, maybe with your top arm along the top side of your body. And then from here, once more, roll onto your belly and just let yourself settle, wiggling your pelvis if you like. That's it. Good. And if you're quite happy on your belly, have a few more breaths there. If you're less happy on your belly, we're going to come to child pose from being on the belly. So if you prefer to be in child, then fold on into child pose whenever you're ready. And a few quiet breaths there. So if at any point you start to feel overheated, then do have a rest or make sure you have some water. I think it is cooling down now and it's got some breeze. So when you've had a few breaths in child pose, we're going to come onto hands and knees. And so we're going to start with a bit of cat, and then we're going to take it into, I suppose, what I always think of as the rolling cat, which you'll be familiar with once we do it. But first of all, just settle onto hands and knees, nice big handprints, hands under the shoulders, knees under the hips, and see how it feels to round your back to the ceiling, to dip your spine to the floor. So these rounding and dipping movements. Maybe notice what your breathing is doing. You don't need to breathe in any particular way. Maybe notice when you're breathing in and when you're breathing. So perhaps once or twice more in each direction, dipping your spine down to the floor, rounding your back to the ceiling, letting your head hang. Dipping down again, rounding up again. And then just pause for a moment in the neutral, in the midline, and you're going to tuck your toes under. So what I would like you to do now is you're going to round your back to the ceiling and then staying rounded, rock your hips back over your heels. And then you're going to bring your shoulders back over your hands by dipping your spine down to the floor. That's it. And then again, round your back to the ceiling, rock your hips back over your heels, staying rounded. And then travel forward so your shoulders come back over to your hands, dipping your spine down. So we're doing this sort of rolling and rounding cat. So rounding up, rocking back, and then dipping down to come back to our starting position. And just carry on with that, maybe 3 more cycles. Rounding up, rocking back, staying rounded, and then dipping down to come forwards. I'm just going to come and have a little look at you. So I think, yes, that's nice. Good. So you did that, so you feel a sort of rolling, rounding, that's it, rounding the back. When you rock back, your toes are tucked under, you look back towards your footprints, good. And then when you come forwards, you're dipping your spine down. And some of you are bending your elbows, which can be helpful, but you don't need to bend. You're not trying to dip your chest all the way down to the floor, just in case you're wondering. Good. Whenever you maybe one more cycle after the one you're doing. That's it. Maybe one more cycle. Round your back up, stay rounded, rock back, and then dip your spine down to come forwards. And then this time, untuck your toes, round your back to the ceiling, rock your hips all the way back into child pose. And just have a breath or two there, taking the weight off your hands. And in fact, from here, so maybe just let another cycle or 2 of breath move through you. So feel your breath come in, feel your breath leave you. And then slither forwards onto your belly once more. And this time, rather than having your forehead on your hands, have your hands just above your head on the floor. So your arms are sort of either side of your head, like in a big circle. Yeah, that's it. Let your legs and pelvis be really heavy. And then a few times as you exhale, I'd like you to sink down into your forearms and elbows and let your head lift up. So sort of catching that out breath, lifting your head, trying to feel the muscles in the upper back involved in that movement. And so sinking into the forearms, lifting the head as you exhale, and then bringing your head back down onto the floor. So do that maybe 3 or 4 times. Good. Just, yeah. So it's a little bit like our dipping down cat, what we feel in the upper back. Okay, make this the last one, and then rest your forehead or your cheek back onto the floor. Don't mind which. If it's comfortable to have your forehead on the floor, it might make the next thing. Well, what I would just like you to do is, with your forehead or your cheek on the floor, try to reach your right hand back and try to catch your right foot. You have to bend your right knee, don't you, to do that. So if you reach your right hand back and you bend your right knee, can you catch your foot? Good. Just try that a couple of times on the right side and see how that feels. And it might be easier to do that if your head is turned to the right. So try that. Yes, and exactly, you can, so try it a couple of times on the right and then try it a couple of times on the left. So do the same thing on the left side. So I just want you, before you lift, you don't need to lift your head off the floor at the moment, just for the moment, a couple of times catching each foot, just so you can decide which is the easier one to catch. Because then I'd like you to start with your easier one. So just try both sides a couple of times and then come back to the easier side. Yes, okay, maybe the other side's maybe easier, Emma, from that, if that's a twinge, yes. So what I'd like you to do now is to catch the easier side and have the other hand resting under your forehead. Have your head turned towards the arm that's catching your foot, and have your cheek resting on the back of the other hand. And then what you're going to do is what you were doing, Emma, which is then lifting your shoulder off the floor by pulling your foot back away from your bottom. So lifting your shoulder and your head, yeah? So you pull your foot away from your bottom and you let your forehead lift off the back of your hand, and you let your shoulder be pulled back, good. And you just do this a few times on one side, and then you do the same thing on the other side, good. So really what is activating this movement is that you're pulling your foot back away from your bottom, and that is pulling your shoulder back, and it's helping you to lift your head. Maybe make this the last time on side 1, and then you can swap onto side 2. So yes, catching your foot with your other hand, turning your head towards that catching arm, resting your cheek on the back of the other hand. And then again, that same movement, and Emma, if it's uncomfortable on this side, then don't push it. Yeah, the same movement of trying to pull your foot back away from your bottom. And as the foot pulls back, it draws the shoulder back with it. It lifts your head away from the back of your hand. And it might be that your head probably your gaze probably comes a bit towards that side where you're lifting. So when your shoulder is being pulled back, it may be that you sort of look in that direction as well, rather than just looking straight forwards. Yes, that's Kayla. And then when you've had enough, you release your leg. And I think from there, once more, you fold back into child pose. So you've probably had long enough on your belly now. Well done. So just fold into child pose for a couple of breaths. Oh yes, and then we've got we're going to do a couple of sequences. But yeah, a few breaths in child pose. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of sequences with dog pose. The first one is going to be more familiar. The second one is, I say, more fun. It's more, yes, a little bit of, I would say, messing around, but it slightly is. So come onto hands and knees and tuck your toes under. So we do this little sequence 3 times, 3 or 4 times actually. We'll do a simpler version to start with. So from hands and knees, tuck your toes under. As you exhale, rock your hips back over your heels, pick your knees up off the floor, come up into dog pose and just see how it feels. And you might want a couple of big exhalations. You might want to do a bit of walking on the spot, bending one knee, bending the other knee, or bending both knees, particularly if you're having a big exhalation. And then from dog pose, you can have another breath or 2 here. We're going to walk our hands into our feet. So we come into a forward bend. Yeah. So hands into the feet. So you're coming into a forward bend. Feel all of your weight in your footprints. Let your head go, let your arms go. If your lower back needs support, bend your knees, rest your elbows on your thighs. And then from this forward bend, you're going to start to bend your knees more. So you're going to drop down into a squat. Now don't worry if your heels come up. You don't need to put support under them. Because from here, we're going to roll through the tops of the feet. So we bring the knees down onto the floor. And then we can walk the hands forward. So we're ready to go into dog pose again. So we're going to do that whole same thing again, but we're going to finish slightly differently after the squat. So hands and knees, tuck your toes under, rock your hips back and up into dog pose. And again, just a few breaths in dog pose, bending one knee, bending the other. I'll have a little look at you. That's very nice, good. And from dog pose, then walking your hands in towards your feet, coming into your forward bend, letting your head go, letting your arms go, feeling all of the weight in your feet. Really rooting those heels into the floor. Good. Good. And then from your forward bend, Starting to bend your knees forwards over your feet. So trying to keep that sort of alignment of the knees going straight forwards. It's fine for the heels to come up. And then from your squat, roll through the tops of your feet so your knees come onto the ground. And then this time we're going to walk a little bit further forwards with the hands. And can you let your pelvis come forwards into face up dog? So you just need to walk a little bit further forwards. Good. And then untuck your toes. So how does it feel to be in face up dog? Let the shoulders come down. And from face up dog, then rock back into child pose. Just for a couple of breaths. So we're going to do that whole sequence now 2 more times, including the face up dog. So when you're ready, come back onto hands and knees. Big handprints on the floor, tucking your toes under. Rocking your hips back over your heels, picking your knees up off the floor, coming up into dog pose. And again, a bit of walking on the spot, a bit of bending both knees, whatever feels good. Whatever takes your fancy in dog pose. I always like in dog pose to breathe through my mouth. Dogs always make these yawny noises through their mouth when they do dog pose. And then from dog, walk on into your forward bend and have a few breaths in your forward bend. So feel that you arrive in your forward bend before you go on into squat, because forward bend is so lovely in itself. Feels so nice for the body. That's it. If we really let the head go, we feel those heels sinking into the ground. And then again, start to bend your knees forwards over your feet. So you come down into your squat. Don't worry if the heels come up, because we're going to roll forwards, let the knees come onto the ground. And then walk the hands forwards. You've got to sort of judge where you stop with the hands so that you're in a good length for face up dog. And you can let your pelvis rock forwards, you can untuck your toes, see how that feels. And then fold all the way back into child pose. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. So what I'd quite like you to do this time is, in your own time, do that little sequence, and I'll have a little look at you. Those of you I can see, Ruth, it's very nice when I eventually see you in your forward bend. So that's it, hands and knees, dog pose. And just give yourself enough time in each of the postures to feel that you arrive, to really feel yourself in them. Enjoy them. Of course, if something's really not feeling great, then do move on. But yeah, easing out. And then, yeah, from dog, enjoy, lovely Marie, enjoying that forward bend, that lovely feeling that we're rooted down through the backs of the legs, into the heels, our spine, our head, our arms, our shoulders can all give their weight to the ground. And then, yes, dropping down into your squat. We will, I think, do a squat later on when we stay in. So if you're feeling your lower back would like to stay in the squat, we will come on to that later. So that's it, from the squat, very nice. Then you roll through the tops of your feet to your best ability onto hands and knees, very nice. Rocking, walking your hands forwards and then letting the pelvis follow. Oh, hello Ruth, nice to see you again. Into your face up dog. And then folding back into child pose, very nice, for a couple of breaths. So just, yeah, in child pose, or if you prefer to be kneeling, if child pose feels a bit hot, you could be kneeling. And then in a moment, I'm going to show you this next little sequence we're going to do. So this is the one, I mean, I thought this was quite fun. Now, depending how much room you've got, so Emma, I was looking at you and you've got room to roll one way. So what you might want to do after doing this sequence a couple of times is turn around on your mat and you'll see why. So watch for a minute. What you're going to do is you're going to come into dog pose. And, have a few breaths in dog. And then from dog, you're going to fold down into child pose. And then from child pose, I want you to try and roll over onto your back. and take your arms and legs up into the air. And then from here, you're going to roll back into child pose, back into dog, okay? And then again, so if you can see, if you've only got space to roll to one side, if you then want to try rolling to the other side, you might want to turn around on your mat once you've done it a couple of times, okay? So this is just a bit of fun, and if you don't like it, you know, you don't have to do it, the rolling around. So first of all, it's dog. So hands, big handprints, tucking the toes under, exhaling up into dog. Just, yeah, being in dog for a couple of breaths. And then from dog, we fold down into child pose. And then from child pose, it might be if you're rolling onto your back, you want to bring your arms to your side. You could try that, or maybe you have your arms in front of you, seeing which is the better. And then from child, can you roll onto your back and then take your arms and legs up to the ceiling and give them a wiggle? And then how can you roll from your back as easily as possible back into child? And then back into dog pose again. So a bit of a lengthen out in dog, and I'm just going to come have a little look. So you come back up into dog, and then you fold back down into child. And then from child, how can you roll over onto your back? That's it. That's very nice. Good. Roll over onto your back, take your arms and legs up to the ceiling, just give them a little bit of a shake out. And then how would you fold your knees back into your chest and then roll back into child pose? Is that possible? That's it. Good. Good. And if you've rolled the same way a couple of times and you need to turn around on your mat, then maybe do so. So you can, yeah, you can try rolling to the other side. And yeah, so it can feel quite different going one side to the other. So I'm going to join you. So we'll do this once or twice more. I'm going to join you rolling to the other side. So you're coming into dog, feeling the legs and that chance to lengthen out. And then folding back into child pose. Rolling onto the back, taking the arms and legs to the ceiling for a bit of a shake out. And then how can we roll back into child? And then on into dog pose. So make this the last time you do this little sequence. Dog pose. Folding down into child pose. Rolling onto your back, shaking your arms and legs up towards the ceiling. And then actually, yes, if you want to do one more dog pose, you can. I think at this point you were supposed to stay lying on your back. Let me see. Yes, you were going to stay on your back for a few breaths. So if you, but if you feel that you want to do one more dog pose too, there is another dog pose in a moment, but where are we? Good. So yes, just lying on your back and having a few quiet breaths after this dog. And yeah, when you're on your back, you just lie however you like. Again, it might be nice, like we did a little while ago, to bring your hands onto the front of your body. And to just, after all that movement, to feel the flow of your breath in your body. And perhaps we'll touch on this now. So I want us to do a bit more of this at the end. This is sort of a focus for breathing that I was playing around with today. And I was calling it the rolling breath. So you're imagining as you breathe, you imagine your breath, the in-breath and the out-breath are two halves of a circle. So perhaps just imagine that for maybe just 3 cycles of breath. So as the breath comes in, you're drawing one half of a circle. And as the breath leaves you, you're drawing the other half of the circle. And just maybe it can help our breathing to soften if we think of it in this circular way, as the breath is rolling through us. In breath, followed by the out breath, and there might be a slight pause. It might be that you draw one half of the circle and then there's a pause before the next part draws. So there's that little pause maybe between the in and the out breath. And then one last time, I'm going to ask you to roll from your back onto your belly. So again, how can you roll over as rolly as possible, disturbing yourself as little as possible. And when you arrive on your belly this time, again, you might like to rest your forehead or your cheek on the back of your hands, one hand on top of the other. And this time you're going to bend your knees and take the soles of your feet up towards the ceiling. And you're going to do this one where you then tilt your feet to the right and to the left and see how that feels. Good. And of course, if this isn't comfortable, some of you, I can see, Emma, you're enjoying that one. If this isn't comfortable, then obviously don't do it, or bring your feet a bit nearer to the floor. But I think quite a lot of you like this one. And if you want to then have just a couple of breaths lying quietly on your belly, letting the legs come down onto the floor. And again, from here, we're going to fold back into child pose. So if you're happier having a couple of breaths in child pose, you can do that. And so from child pose, we're going to come through dog pose into standing, but I thought we could do our one-legged dog poses now. So any of those one-legged variations you like, it can be with your top raised leg long, or bending the knee, rolling the pelvis. So I think you all know those ones. So again, obviously we want really big handprints on the floor if we're going to take one leg off the floor. So arriving in your dog pose, and then you can see how does it feel to take one leg up. I always like the one where I'm rolling my pelvis, reaching into my heel. When you take your leg off the floor, you can either have your knee bent or you can take a long leg up. Sometimes it's easier to take a bent knee up and then eventually straighten it, reaching into your heel. So again, in these ones, it's quite nice to go from side to side a couple of times to each side. If that feels okay, you can obviously roll your pelvis, let the top knee bend. Do that on both sides if you like. And then whenever you've had enough in your dog, walking your hands in towards your feet, into your forward bend. A breath or two there. Quite nice to see how the forward bend feels now. Can the heels be really rooted into the ground? And then rolling up into standing eventually. So we're not going to do a huge amount of standing. So Kayla was saying she's on a spongy floor tonight. We are going to do a little bit balancing, but not very much. In fact, not a huge amount in standing at all. And yes, I'm going to block out that light with my head. So when you arrive in standing, you could just, maybe to start with, do these easy swinging twists. Create a bit of air around you. Very nice. See everyone well now. That's lovely. Good. You could be slapping your hands onto your body, particularly if you need a little bit of a wake up. It's time in the evening. Excellent. Now, let's let that go and let's settle the feet down in Tadasana, so mountain pose, feet hip width apart and parallel. And what I'd like you to do first of all is maybe closing your eyes, you don't have to, but a little bit of rocking your weight from side to side. So we feel the weight going into the right foot, into the left foot. And it's not just going into the right or the left foot, it's going into the outer edge of the foot we rock onto. So we're feeling that sort of, outer edge of the foot going into more contact with the ground. So that's side to side. You can open your eyes whenever you want to. What I'd like you to do now is a little bit of rocking your weight forwards and back along the length of the footprints. And so this is what we're going to play around with a bit more in standing today, is this, how is it when we rock our weight forwards and back in a couple of different ways. So Kayla, this is our little bit of balancing. From here, we're going to rock our weight onto the balls of both feet. So I think this one is perhaps less difficult on a spongy floor, because you've got 2 feet on the floor. So just a few times, unlike me, trying to rock your weight forwards onto the balls of your feet and balance. So come up and down a few times and then we'll stay there. So if you can come up and feel steady on the balls of your feet, you could then float your arms up, let your shoulders drop. And just see if we can find a moment of steady quiet. Feeling long and tall, the shoulders are dropping, the front ribs are quiet. You feel the breath, flow of the breath through us. A couple of breaths if possible. Good, come down. Have a little shake out, and then we're going to do the same thing again. I know we've done this one several times. We're going to do it where we do this mudra, Hakini mudra, over our head first of all. So we take our arms up, we touch our hands over our head where we can't see them, and then we bring the hands down in front of the chest. So, which I'm rather keen on this one, I should probably realise as we do it a bit. So, the same thing, we'll bring our weight forwards. So shifting our weight forwards onto the balls of the feet, letting the heels come up, trying to find our balance here. And then we'll let the arms float up, and that interesting movement of connecting the fingers and the thumbs over the head, letting the shoulders feel soft and relaxed. Have another breath or so here, and then let the hands come down, float down in front of your chest. And this one, I quite like to take the elbows out to the sides. And you've got this real domed shape in the hands. And then how is it here to keep balancing the hands in front of us? Feeling the breath flow in, feeling the breath flow out. Very nice. And when we come down from here, we're going to go all the way down into a forward bend. Let the head go, let the arms go. Feel the weight well in the heels now. So from taking the weight into the balls of the feet, we then take the weight well into the heels and bend your knees as much as you like. In your forward bend, good. You can go into a squat if you like, Maria, but actually we'll be coming on to that in a moment. So from your forward bend, let's see, when you're ready, you can be rolling back into standing. When you come back into standing, maybe have a little bit of a shake out. So we're going to do one more little exercise, where we are thinking about this weight shifting into the fronts of the feet. And this isn't a balance, Kayla. This is, we're thinking about here, shifting our weight towards the front of our feet and letting our gaze come up. So this movement where we're letting our pelvis come forwards. So our weight comes into our feet, our pelvis comes forwards, we can look up. So our bodies come into the standing back arch. So we can do this with our hands on our belly. We try not to sort of overdo it in the neck. Yeah? We can do it like this. Let's try, we can do it taking one arm up. So we're not going too far at this point. We're just, we're going to do this as a sequence in a moment. So there is also this possibility of it might help to bend your knees, yeah? So it might help you to be able to drop your tailbone and feel happier in your lower back if you bend your knees more. You still want that feeling of your weight coming towards the front of your feet. Another possibility is to support your head with one hand or with both, yeah? So if your neck doesn't feel that happy, then supporting your head is an option. Okay. Let's just go into a forward bend for a moment, and then I think we need to go the other way for a minute. So come into a forward bend. And then, yes, just a couple of breaths there. And then we're going to do this as a little bit of a sequence. So from your forward bend, you can roll up. And then maybe just try, as you come up this time, again, the weight coming to the front of the feet. What's it like to bring both arms up? And you can try that a couple of times. Pelvis comes forwards, the arms come up, our weight comes forwards in our feet. So what we're going to do 3 times is standing back arch, forward bend, down into a squat. Now you may, I think we'll do the last squat that we stay there and you have your wedge or your book if you want. So you choose whichever standing back arch you want to do. So I was thinking of both arms coming up, but you can do a different variation if you prefer to support your head or have one arm. So coming into your standing back arch and then sweeping all the way down, rolling down into your forward bend. And then from your forward bend on down into your squat. Doesn't matter if your heels come up. So we've really gathered up in the front of the body, and then we're going to roll back. So sinking, sending the sit bones up to the ceiling, roll back into your forward bend, and then trail your fingertips up the front of your body so you're rolling all the way up into your standing back arch. And then sweeping down again, all the way into your forward bend. And then bending the knees all the way down into a squat. So we come into this little ball of a squat. And so one more time, we're going to roll up into our forward bend, tracing the fingertips up the front of the body, all the way up into the standing back arch. And then rolling back down into the forward bend and on into your squat. And if this time, if you wanted to stay in your squat, with something under your heels, you could do. You could even roll up the back of your mat. You could have a cushion. Good. And just have a few breaths here. Letting your pelvis drop. So that's why it's good to, some of you I know can be quite comfortable in the squat without anything under your heels. But if that's not the case, then have something under your heels. From squat, if you get to the point where you've had enough in squat, from squat we're coming on to sit in cobbler pose. So when you're ready to come out of your squat, you're going to sit down. It's terribly dark. I'm just going to see if I can, sometimes if I stand up it gets a bit brighter. Maybe not. So sitting down in cobbler pose, leaning back onto your hands. So we're going to do a little bit more in cobbler pose later on. What I'd like you to do from here is, let's lengthen one leg out on the floor. It doesn't matter which. And then you're going to take the other foot, the other leg, and you're going to stand that foot on the floor. And then you're going to hold around this bent knee and use this leg as a support so your spine can grow upwards. You want your shoulders to stay relaxed, but you want to just try and feel the spine is nice and long and tall. Because we're going to do a twist here. We're going to turn, first of all, towards this bent leg. So you'd hold around your knee with your the opposite hand and arm. And the other hand can be on the floor behind you. Your fingertips then can help support your spine. I'll just swing round. That's it. So we turn towards that bent leg, using both arms and hands to help support us. Breath or two here. And then we can turn towards that bent leg. So now we're holding around the leg with the same arm. The fingertips of the other hand are coming onto the floor behind us. So we turn towards the long leg. Or we can still hold around that bent leg to help support our spine. And then come back to the center, lean back onto your hands for a moment, lengthen out the bent knee leg. So both legs along on the floor, give the legs a little bit of a roll. And then bend the other knee, bring that foot to stand on the floor. Come and hold around that bent knee. And feel that you can let your spine grow upwards using this support of the bent leg. So the shoulders are dropping, shoulders are as relaxed as possible, but we have this feeling of a long, straight spine. And then again, we can turn towards this bent leg. So we're holding around the knee with the opposite hand. The other fingertips of the other arm are on the floor behind you. So we're turning towards that bent leg. This, if you ate a lot of dinner before the class, this arm twist might be a bit challenging. The closed twist, we call it. Turning towards the leg. And then from a breath or two more here, we can turn back towards the bent knee, swap the arms over. So this time I tend to hold my knee in the crook of my arm. And then the other fingertips coming onto the floor behind you, turning away from that bent leg. So this is what we call the open twist, turning towards the long leg. A bit easier if you've had a big dinner. Having a few breaths here. Again, using the fingertips on the floor to help keep your spine nice and long. And then turning back to the center, leaning back on your hands, lengthening both legs out in front of you, giving them a little bit of a roll. And then what we're going to do now is, so we're going to come now to a little bit of rounding our spine and a bit of rolling back. And then we're going to come to working a bit more with the spine being straight. So come towards the front of your mat. We're doing this one where we're starting off by sliding our hands from our feet up towards our knees. That's it. And just looking down at the floor. So we start off looking at the floor. As our hands come up towards our knees, we're looking down at our belly. And just do this a few more times. So we're really wanting our back to round out. We're trying to feel we have this round back. We'll take this one stage further at the moment, and then we're going to go on to something else and then come back to this. So what you can do from here is you can then roll back, let your feet pick up off the floor. And then roll up again, looking forward. So you're not straightening your legs out at this time. You're just going to let yourself roll back onto the middle of your back, keep your knees bent, and then look forwards and come up again. Just do that perhaps 2 or 3 more times, rolling back, looking at your belly, and then looking forwards to come back up. And we're just thinking about our back being rounded. So of course it's going to be easier to roll backwards if we let our back be round, like a ball or a pebble. Yeah, so we don't want to think about our back being flat. A nice round curved spine. Okay, that will, yeah, maybe just lean back on your hands and lengthen your legs out for the moment when you come back up this time. So we will come back. You'll be thrilled to hear and do a little bit more of that one. But first of all, I want you to come back and think about your spine being, so in this similar position, your spine being very straight, like it was for the twist. Can we bring our arms around the back of our thighs and come to balance on our sit bones? So you want to keep your thighs really close to your chest and your back straight. If you let your back round out, you'll rock backwards, okay? So that's why we keep it. So it's a little bit of balance here. We can do this, yeah? Can we maybe? Straighten one leg a bit and then the other. Yeah, so taking one leg up. Good, and balancing on your sit bones as you do this. You could take both legs up. Again, if you straighten your legs too much and your thighs come away from your chest, you'll roll backwards. So you can try that a couple of times. So keep your thighs really close to your chest so your spine stays straight, and then you can balance. Now it can be, you might want to come down for a moment. So here, the hip flexors can get a little bit perhaps overactive in that one when we straighten the legs. So there are options for that one where we hold on to our feet. So one option is, I'm doing these side on because I thought they might, one option is to catch your big toes in cobbler pose. And from here to bring the legs up, but trying to keep the thighs close to your chest. That's one option. You could be holding your feet in a different way. You could be holding over the tops of your feet. But you're trying to keep, so it's less important to straighten your legs than it is to keep your thighs really close to your chest. So we're quite upright in this one, good. And we're not letting, we're not round or back. So you could hold over the tops of your feet. You could hold around the sides of your feet. You could even interlink your fingers. Yeah, underneath your feet. These are just, these are just a bit of I'm not sure they're light relief, but a bit of fun, a different way to balance. And yes, and again, lean back onto your hands, give your legs a roll out. So we're going to then come back to the rolling back ones where we are rounding our back, and we'll take those on to the lovely ones and you'll all love where we lengthen our legs out. So come back to here. So yeah, come back to the starting point where we've got our knees bent. We start from this movement, sliding the hands from the feet to the knees, looking down at the belly and the floor. And just remind ourselves, maybe do this 2 or 3 times, remind yourself of how it feels to have a rounded back. And then we can start to go a little bit further. So we can slide our hands to our knees, we can then pick the feet up off the floor, we can roll back. Maybe do that a couple of times before you straighten your knees out, come back up. So rock back, look forwards, come back up. And then perhaps this time you roll down. We're trying to balance on the middle of your back. Can you straighten your legs? So we're in this long, low shape with a curved back. Oh, very, very different than the other balance, but it's still a bit of a balance. So let's try that a couple more times. We can roll back. We can let the knees pick up, no, the feet pick up, sorry, and then lengthen the legs out. So we're still trying to balance here on, can't even speak. We're trying to balance on that bit between our pelvis and our rib cage. After this one, you can lie down onto your backs. So one last time, slide your hands from your feet to your knees, let your feet pick up off the floor. Can you balance on the middle of your back? And then lengthen your legs out. Heels and shoulders the same height. Oh, and then collapsing down onto your back. So if you're anything like me, you got a little bit hot and sweaty in that one. So just lie down, cool down, enjoy, enjoy the feeling of doing nothing for a moment. We are going to do some more sort of rolling-y things on our backs. But for the moment, you can just lie. You can roll your head a little bit on the floor, perhaps. That's quite nice after that one. So easing the head to the right and to the left. Finding a comfortable place to settle the head in the centre. Maybe bring your hands to the front of your body if they're not there already, and feel how responsive the front of your body can be as you breathe. So obviously, when we're in that balance, our abdominals are working very hard. Here, we can just let the front of the body be soft. So as the breath fills us, we maybe feel the belly rise, the ribs widen. As the breath leaves us, we feel the front of the body fall back, soften, settle, empty. Something else you could do here just before we move on to the next rolling is to bend both knees, stand both feet on the floor. Come back to one of the very first things we did of letting the knees tilt to the right and to the left. That can feel quite nice. So coming back to that sit, tilting the knees from side to side, feeling your weight rock to the right and to the left side of your pelvis. And so do this maybe once, twice more to each side. And then settle in the center. So settling your feet down, so knees bent, feet standing on the floor. And we're going to, let's see, you're going to bring your hands around the back of your head, interlink your fingers around the back of your head, and you're going to do that little sort of mini sit up, whereas you exhale, you lift your head, you look between your legs, and you can also tilt your pelvis, so you're pressing the middle of your back on the floor, so a bit like in our boat pose a moment ago. And then come back, bring your head back onto the floor. You're going to alternate then coming into bridge pose. So release your head, bring your arms down by your sides, sink into your feet, come up into bridge pose. So I'd like you to do this 3 times. You go into bridge pose and then you come back into that little mini sit up, also tilting your pelvis so the middle of your back presses down onto the floor. Then again into bridge pose, that's it. And just see how those feel, because those 2 movements can inform each other quite nicely. So in bridge pose, we open out through the middle of ourselves. Good. And in the little sit up, we gather up in the middle of ourselves. And yes, when you've done your next bridge pose, then you could finish by folding your knees into your chest. And we're going to develop this little sequence. Now, I'm going to try and talk you into this, and then if it doesn't make sense, I will show you, but we have done this before. So with your knees folded into your chest, bring your arms down by the side of your body. By the sides of your body, not out to the side, by the sides of your body. And then what you're going to do here is press down into your arms and bring your knees towards your forehead and support your pelvis then with your hands. So just like the beginning of, what do I call it? Shoulder stand. So if you press down through your arms, bring your pelvis off the floor, knees to your forehead, support your pelvis with your hands. And then lower your pelvis back onto the floor. And stand your feet on the floor and come into bridge pose. So sink down into your feet, come into bridge pose. And then you're going to repeat that again. So bring your pelvis back onto the floor, fold your knees into your chest, press down into your arms, bring your knees to your forehead if you can. Sammy, is that okay? Or is that a little bit of a struggle? Because what you could do, you're okay there, good. So then you're coming to that sort of beginning of shoulder stand, your knees come towards your forehead, you then bend your elbows, support your pelvis with your hands. And then you come back down again into bridge pose. And then this time, so come back down into bridge pose. And then this time, when you go into that base of shoulder stand, you could go all the way on into shoulder stand. And if you would prefer to come and put your feet on the wall and roll into shoulder stand that way, or if you prefer to not do shoulder stand at all, then you can just have a few quiet breaths. Oh, very nice to see your feet there, Ruth, and your legs. That's it. So you're not going to stay there long. It's just quite nice on a hot day. Sam, you might even just want to take your legs up the wall, possibly. It's just quite nice on a long day to bring on a long hot day to bring the legs up into the air. A couple of breaths there. And whenever you want to, you can, yeah, that's it, that's my sound, good. So just, yeah, just seeing how you feel in that shoulder stand. Yes, you can always bring your, so if something, yeah, you can come back down, you can stay there, you can go in and out. But whenever you've had enough, you can also just come back down and lie quietly on your back. Just however you like. And maybe when you've come down, then just a bit of easing your head from side to side. So when you're down, not when you're in, shoulders down, please. Easing your head from side to side. And so I think when some of you are joining in the week after next for a class, hopefully in my garden, let's hope for good weather, we will maybe do a little bit more shoulder, possibly depending who's there, shoulder stand, headstand. Because these things are better to do in person. Okay, a little bit more rocking now. We're going to do a little bit of our happy baby rocking. So you can fold your knees into your chest and then taking your feet, your knees quite wide apart, keep your knees bent, take the soles of your feet towards the ceiling. And then you can hold around the back of your knees, you can hold your shins or your ankles or your sides of your feet or your big toes, and you can rock from side to side. So you just catch your legs wherever you like. So you can rock to side with the legs being quite passive, or you could rock yourself from side to side by reaching into one leg and then the other. So if you reach into your leg as it comes to the center, you're less likely to roll all the way onto your side. So you could reach out to the side through one leg and then the other, but you might roll all the way over onto your side, but it's fine. You know, just have a little play around with it. So the legs can be quite passive in Happy Baby, or we can actually rock ourselves by reaching into one leg and then the other. And yeah, and you know, for Happy Baby is for me, it's always one of those things that feels really good for my lower back. So I've had a strangely sort of creaky pelvis earlier in the week. And you could release your legs, take your legs up to the ceiling, just give them a little shake out, and bring them. We're going to do one more little rocking thing in a moment, but perhaps just bring your legs back onto the floor for a moment, legs or feet back onto the floor. Just have a couple of quiet breaths. And then from here, you're going to see how it is to bring on your back, to bring your feet into cobbler pose. So this is not with the feet on the floor, but with the feet up in the air. And again, so you want to touch the soles of your feet together, and just can you catch your shins, your ankles around your feet or your big toes? Try to keep your heels touching, and then can you rock side to side, holding your feet or your ankles or your shins. And maybe not just Emma, but Emma, if you wanted to, you could, and you've got the space from here, you could see, can you then rock yourself all the way into sitting cobbler pose? Yeah. And if you rock into sitting cobbler pose, can you rock all the way back onto your back? If you've got loads of space, you could rock onto the other side. So you don't have to rock. Oh, very nice, Sam, lovely. So, and if you've rocked over, we will end up in sitting cobbler pose, but if you've rocked over, can you rock back again? And you could roll around in a whole little circle if you so wished. So this is just a bit of fun. And then, yes, eventually end up sitting in cobbler, upright in cobbler pose. You don't have to rock, just come and sit in cobbler pose. So, and you might want to do the same as me here. So what we're going to do is we're going to be in cobbler pose quite upright, and then keeping a hold of your feet. You're going to then start to walk your sit bones back away from your feet, this funny sort of walk. Yeah, but leave your feet behind. So at a certain point, you're going to stop. So you're in a long cobbler pose, but if you carried on walking back, you wouldn't be in cobbler pose anymore. And then what I'd like you to do is that sort of in this long cobbler pose, rock from side to side. I'm in a long cobbler pose, I'm rocking from side to side, and I often find this long cobbler pose forward bend quite challenging, but I was actually doing this rocking today, and I thought this for me makes it a bit easier. So you can do a bit more rocking, or you could have a few quiet breaths in this long cobbler pose forward bend. And if you have a cushion or anything that you know, if you've got a cushion to hand, sometimes it's helpful in this long cobbler pose forward bend to have a cushion under your arms. To lean down onto. And again, it might be that you have a few breaths folding forwards, but it might be that you want to come back to a little bit of rocking from side to side. And from your cobbler pose forward bend, if you liked, you could also walk your sit bones back in towards your feet by rocking from side to side, so you end up back in a more upright cobbler pose. And then we can lean back onto our hands and lengthen our legs out in front of us. Give the legs a little bit of a roll. So I think we'll come and sit now, just do a little bit of the breathing that we touched on earlier, this sort of rolling breath I was talking about. So let's do a little bit in sitting, and then we'll move on to lying. So if you could have your back against the wall, or your back against, gosh, it's dark in here, hasn't it? That's better. Your back against the wall, back against your sofa or your bed, depending where you are. And just, yeah, just taking that time, a cushion, you could be in kneeling. So just taking a little bit of time once you've found your sitting position. And again, if you find come into a sitting position and it's not particularly comfortable, do change it. Yeah, so what we're thinking about here, I've got my hands on my hips, I'll move the screen around. So our first thing in sitting, I'm sitting in this sort of Siddhasana, one heel in front of the other, and I'm sitting on a cushion. You don't have to do this, but I find this is just quite a good way to sit. And then it's maybe just a little bit of rocking or swaying or circling, so that the pelvis and the legs feel heavy. And that's a big part of trying to be comfortable in sitting. Is, you know, the heavier we can feel from the waist down, the more our spine is able to grow upwards effortlessly. So it's a bit like a plant. When a plant is, you know, well planted, you know, lots of gardening today and yesterday. So when a plant is well planted in the soil, the stem can then sort of grow upwards, you know, much sort of more strong. There's more support for the stem of the flower when it's well rooted into the soil. And then let's just let the hands rest on the thighs. Your palms can be up or down, it doesn't matter. And let's have 2 or 3 big sighing breaths. We breathe in, we let the shoulders come up, and then we exhale, drop the shoulders. So perhaps one more time, breathing in. Exhaling, dropping the shoulders. And closing the eyes and just, gathering our awareness, our attention into our breathing. So we're focusing, we're bringing our focus to our breath, but that's not the only thing we're aware of. In the field of our awareness, there's also the weight of the pelvis and the legs. We're settled on the ground. There's also maybe the feeling of the air on our skin, sounds around us. But our main focus is on our breathing. And come back to that image of breathing in a circle. So as your breath comes in, you're drawing one half of a circle. And as your breath leaves you, you're drawing the other half of a circle. And stay with that image for another 2 or 3 cycles of breath. Breathing in, you trace one half of a circle. Breathing out, you trace or you draw the other half of the circle. So we have this sense of our breathing rolling through us. The inhalation followed by the out breath. And then we could think a little bit more about maybe the circle, we elongated, it becomes a bit more of an oval. So we'll let the breath come in. We draw this half of the circle of the oval, and then there's this pause at the end of our inhalation. And then as we exhale, we draw the other half of the oval. And we reach maybe the bottom of the oval and we pause at the end of the out breath for a moment. And then we draw again as we breathe in, we draw the other half of the oval. Pausing at the top of the oval, at the end of our inhalation. And then as we exhale, drawing the other half of the oval all the way down to the bottom. Pausing at the end of the exhalation for a moment. And then letting the breath come in. Drawing again the other half of the oval, pausing at the top at the end of the inhalation for a moment, and then exhaling, drawing second side of the oval down to the bottom, pausing at the end of the exhalation. So just, I think, in your own time for perhaps 3 more cycles of breath, see how it feels to stay with this feeling of we're drawing this oval shape now as we breathe. So inhalation is one side of the oval. There's this pause at the end of the inhalation at the top of the oval. And then we draw the other side of the oval as we exhale. And at the end of the exhalation, we pause for a moment, the bottom of the oval. 2 more cycles of breath. And then just come back to the image of your breath being more like a circle now. So we're not adding in those pauses. We're breathing in, we're drawing one half of the circle. Exhaling, we're drawing the other half of the circle. Just for 2 more cycles of breath. Breathing in, half a circle. Exhaling the other half of a circle. And then let that focus go, the focus on the breathing, the focus on the circle. Just let your awareness, your focus expand outwards. So you feel once more the contact of your legs and pelvis on the ground. You feel the air on your skin. Maybe open your eyes and see the light around you. Hear the sounds. And then from here we can fold forwards, and then we'll come to lie down for our last little bit. So you can bring your hands on the floor as you fold forwards. If you like to touch your forehead on the floor, then I want to let your bottom come up. And then when you're ready, lying down onto your mats. And do grab a blanket if you feel that you're cooling down. We'll just have 2 or 3 minutes lying quietly on the floor. So settle yourself down. If it feels, you can lie knees bent, legs long. If you've got a pillow or a cushion, a couple of cushions to hand, you want under the back of your knees, that can be very nice. If your legs are feeling, your feet, ankles feeling swollen or hot, you can always put your legs up the wall or on a chair, sofa, a bed. You might like to let your head roll a little bit to the right and to the left. Feeling the contact of the back of your head on the floor. Finding a comfortable place to settle the back of your head down. And then letting the back of your shoulders rest on the floor. Your elbows, your hands could rest on your belly or on the floor beside you. Feel the contact of the back of your torso on the ground, the rib cage, some of the vertebrae maybe, and then the back of the pelvis, giving the weight of those heavy bones of the pelvis to the ground. And down through the length of your legs, maybe to your heels if your legs are long, the heel bones, or into your footprints if your knees are bent. Feeling the breath come in, feeling the breath leave you. So in a moment, I'm going to ring the singing bowl 3 times. And just let the sounds come to you until we reach the silence at the end of the 3rd sound. You don't need to move. You're just taking your time, everyone. Thank you. No rush. It's amazing how the light has changed.